Hey everybody, it's been a while because I've been a little busy. I got that job, so I'm pretty happy about that, and I'm going to be graduating, so a lot of big things happening, so that's why I haven't made a video in a while. Although there was that time I didn't make videos for like 2 years, and there was really no reason for that. But anyway, um, today I want to talk about Ronald Reagan. Um, I will fully admit why I thought of this. It wasn't my original idea. I read an article about how Rand Paul was cut, basically saying Reagan was terrible on the deficit, and I thought, oh yeah, I need to do a video about Reagan. Um, yeah, there are just so many misconceptions about this guy. Uh, Reagan, he's credited with lowering the unemployment rate, being very successful at doing that. He lowered it by 3.3%, which is nothing to sneeze at. But if you look at how he did it, he changed the way it's calculated. And not only that, but that record's been beaten by Obama now, anyway. And it was beaten by FDR. Um, so yeah, the unemployment thing was some skewed numbers. He tripled the deficit. I mean, tripled it. Jimmy Carter's last budget was like $40 billion in the deficit. Reagan's first budget was like $120 billion in deficit spending. So no, this guy sucks. Then people say, well, he said tear down this wall, and that's what led to the Soviet Union. That is such a simplistic explanation of how the Cold War ended. The Cold War ended because of 40 some years of foreign policy focused on it. We fought proxy wars over this. We had spies, we had our economic theories, everything. There was so much involved in taking down the Soviet Union. And you want to say it's because Ronald Reagan uttered to tear down this wall that he somehow gets all the credit for the Soviet Union? I I just don't get that. I don't get it at all. Not only that, it didn't even happen under him. It was like 3 years after he left office. So I don't get why he gets the credit for that. I think it should be an obvious thing, but apparently it isn't. This is a guy who totally ignored AIDS, the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. This is the guy whose Just Say No drug campaign sucked. He was tough. He was one of those tough on crime, mandatory minimums. This guy helped fuel the drug war. He is the worst, one of the worst presidents for drug policy. Reagan. Um, Even if you look at his approval ratings, they're decent. They're like 51 or so percent over the course of his presidency. But if you look historically, that's not as popular as Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's was significantly higher. Um, it's a little bit better than George W. Bush and Richard Nixon's. Um, yeah, George W. Bush and Richard Nixon actually had like an average approval rating of like 49%, which is interesting because I would have thought way different. um, yeah, and in the early 90s when they were polling which presidents had higher approval ratings, Jimmy Carter routinely beat Reagan. So he wasn't even a good ex-president. Um, yeah, Reagan just why he has become so popular is there was a very specific movement started in the late 90s to preserve his image, and not really preserve his image, blow up his image to this guy who was the savior of America and the Republican Party. But really, this guy was not a great president. And in my opinion, he was a terrible president. I mean, I told you some of the reasons why. He treated South America just terribly. Like, so many covert military operations you wouldn't believe. Um, and Iran Contra, which he should have been impeached for. I mean, if any president has a deal going on that would result of arming enemies of the United States, I mean, oh my gosh, I don't know how he didn't get impeached over that. Um, he so shredded the tax base with his tax cuts that it basically ensured deficits for years and decades to come. Um, yeah, this guy was just not a good president. He wasn't. And people really need to start pushing back against this. Like, this guy gets put up there with FDR, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ronald Reagan. No, this guy just sucked, honestly. Like, he was not a good president. Um, we've just been. I do have to hand it to the people who tried to rehabilitate his image. They've done a fantastic job. Like, everybody I know that is a Republican has this whole "I love Reagan" mentality. Um, no, really, he wasn't a good president. And Rand Paul's comments were dead on. I mean, the guy did triple the deficit. He was terrible on the deficit, and Jimmy Carter was better. It's just it's just the facts. Like, you can go and look up the budgets. It's true. What he's saying is true. But anyway, yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Reagan, terrible president. Um, Rand Paul, interesting hearing that from Rand Paul. Might have to do a video on libertarians, because there are different types of libertarians. But I'll have to do a video on them sometime. All right, well, that's basically the end of my rant on Ronald Reagan. See ya.